Sorry about that. Just had a minor tech problem. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's session. So today we'll be um, talking about the types of entrepreneurs, and I was hoping this would be an interactive session, but um, if you don't have a lot of people, I think it would be hard to have an interactive session. So I'll just go over the slides and then I'll entertain questions in the end, if any. So moving on to today's presentation. So we'll jump right straight into it. And the first type of entrepreneurs I'm going to be talking about today are innovative entrepreneurs. So these entrepreneurs have the ability to think newer and better, and they have more economical ideas of business organization and management, like it says on the slide. So they're basically creative people who come up with new ideas. They're also it's also a startup, so they're an entrepreneur for starting it up, right? If you have attended my previous session, we talked about Soul Rebels and Bethlehem Alahun. She's an example of an innovative entrepreneur, for example, because she brought up the idea of Soul Rebels, which brings in a mix of traditional footwear and also modern footwear. And her footwear is available for everyone around the world. And that's a creative idea. So she's innovative, but she's also an entrepreneur for taking a risk and starting this business, right? So she can be a very good example. And then we can also look at Nano, which is a small car that was invented by Ratan Tata, and that's also an innovative idea. So there are cars, but it's a smaller car, and for people who like small cars, they will drive Nano around, right? And so he's innovative, but also an entrepreneur for taking the risk to start this business. So moving on, the next type of entrepreneurs, I think, and these are the most common ones, especially in our country, they're imitating entrepreneurs. So these entrepreneurs are people who follow the path shown by other innovative entrepreneurs. So they imitate other entrepreneurs, like people who imitate Bill Gates, um, and his style of entrepreneurship. Those are imitating entrepreneurs, and this is very common in countries that are still um, they still have like weak industrial base, because and that's the reason they're imitating other entrepreneurs, because it's easier for them to imitate rather than create innovative ideas, because there's a weak industrial system, right? So these entrepreneurs, like I said, are very common in our country. A lot of people base their ideas of other entrepreneurs around the world, and but the ideas they have are very helpful for our country and the society in general, so they are accepted and they're very successful. And then next we're going to talk about social entrepreneurs. So these entrepreneurs are also very common um, around the world, let's say, because imitating entrepreneurs are common in countries like ours, right? So social entrepreneurs, they drive social innovation and transformation in various fields, and they the first consideration they the first thing they take into consideration is poverty, right? When moving forward and coming up with ideas, because the countries they're working as an entrepreneur in are mostly affected by poverty, and so they are coming up with ideas to overcome that, and they're trying to go out of the traditional practices in specific societies, and they help push people forward and help them try new things by creating these new innovative ideas. And since it's also a risk for them to convince society that's so used to doing things traditionally, since it's very risky, they're also entrepreneurs because there's a risk that their business won't succeed, let's say, because of the the way people are and how they don't like to get out of their comfort zone, and because people are very tied to um, their traditional practices, they won't step out of it, and it's very hard to convince people to do that. So social entrepreneurs, um, in my opinion, take the most risk, but are also very successful and very helpful all around the world. And they also come up with innovative ideas in fields such as education, health, human rights, workers' rights, the environment, and so on. So this is also something that's very confusing to most people, I think, and they mix the two up. So there's a huge difference between an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur, and a lot of people mix that up. So I think when discussing the types of entrepreneurs, it's very critical to have like a clear divide between the two um, fields, to say. So an entrepreneur is the owner of a business, so they're their own boss and they make their own decision, right? And their rewards are uncertain, unlimited because they're not hired by someone per se. And an entrepreneur is a manager, so they're hired in a company, they're a salaried employee, and they execute their decisions in concurrence with the owner. So basically, what it means is that whatever ideas they have, they first take it to the owner, and they need the owner's approval to move forward with it. Whereas an entrepreneur is the owner, therefore they make their own decisions. And I think a lot of people um, mix these two up, and I think it's very critical to know the difference and like distinctively separate these two, right? So an entrepreneur has a fixed award, unlike an entrepreneur. They have a fixed salary, and that's what they're getting paid. And along the way, their salary might increase, decrease depending on how they work, but they have a fixed reward. Whereas an entrepreneur is uncertain, unlimited, depending on the time. So certain entrepreneurs, for example, might be suffering a loss because of the COVID-19 situation, right? Whereas an entrepreneur will get paid by the owner, therefore, they might not be directly affected per se. Okay, so now that we've cleared that up, um, let's go over some myths about entrepreneurship. So these are very common myths, and a lot of people, say these things just because they're a tradition. People say it, and it just goes around, and people start believing it. And so we're just gonna discuss specific ones, specific myths that aren't true, and some might be partially true. So there's this wrong belief that people think that entrepreneurs, like leaders, are born and not made. So this is not true because entrepreneurship is a discipline, whereas leadership is a quality, right? A quality is something that you build on based on something that you have. So a leader, you might have leadership qualities and build on them by exercising on them. And for entrepreneurship, you can study the discipline, right, through experience or going to school, however it may be, um, and you learn from it. And then you also there's models and processes and case studies that you have to look at. So most of most of the things in entrepreneurship are learned. So one can learn about entrepreneurship by studying the discipline, and then based on other skills you have, like leadership, um, and your ability to communicate with others and convince others, based on those things, you add to your entrepreneurial discipline, which helps you grow your business and then make a lot of money. So we've disproved this myth. And then there's this other belief also that says entrepreneurs are academic and socially misfits, and this is a common misunderstanding because people like Bill Gates are high school dropouts, right? And so people think, yeah, so and if you look at the top entrepreneurs we look at in the world, they either dropped out of high school, they have no formal education, so on and so forth. But it does not apply to everyone. And people often misunderstand. They think that they should drop out of high school just because Bill Gates did, and I that's not a good idea. So if education makes a better entrepreneur, and it makes you a true entrepreneur because you studied the discipline. You go to school to study for it, right? Or you learn through experience, whichever one. But there are also other educated entrepreneurs that are very successful and they study the discipline, therefore they suffer less losses than um, people who haven't studied entrepreneurship. So people who haven't studied it or haven't experienced it, I guess, um, have a hard time. They suffer more losses because they don't know what to do next. Whereas a person who studied entrepreneurship as a discipline knows what to do moving forward. Therefore, they can cut down the risk, the amount of risk they're taking, and the amount of losses they'll have. And then continued there, we have two more to cover. So to be an entrepreneur, one needs only money. That's so also a common misunderstanding. Finance is is obviously the lifeblood of an enterprise, a business, and it helps it survive and grow. But money is not a problem if you have a good idea, right? You can present it to people in corporate world, and pretty sure if it's a very good idea, very innovative, and helps the society, those people will be willing to invest in your idea. So money really isn't the only thing you need to be an entrepreneur. If you have an idea, I think that's the first the first thing you need or the starting point for an entrepreneur, right? So if you have that idea, then money is not a problem because um, there are a lot of people who would like to invest on your idea, right? So the other thing is an entrepreneur to be an entrepreneur, a great idea is the only ingredient. So this is, I think, partially true, but not fully true. So you can have a great idea, but you need a proper combination of your resources and management and people that help you around help around you and support you. That's also very critical. So I wouldn't say having a great idea isn't is the only ingredient, but it's very critical to become an entrepreneur. So if you have a good or a great idea, um, then that will help you, you know, gather people around you to help support you, so you can get the funding, whatever it may be, to make it a successful venture, right? But if the idea isn't that great, then a lot of people wouldn't want to spend their time, you know, and help you um, develop the idea and get the funding, so on and so forth. And then the last one is that one wants to be an entrepreneur because a, a boss is having no boss is fun. Well, I mean, that's not the only thing that determines whether you would like to be an entrepreneur or not, but it's not the only, the boss isn't the only person who's demanding, right, in a workforce. Even when you're an entrepreneur, you have demands that come straight to you because you're your own boss. So technically, it's not like you don't have a boss. It's just that you're your own boss, and you have to decide what's prioritized and what comes next and what you have to do moving forward, so on and so forth. Which puts a lot of pressure on you, and a lot of people misunderstand that. They think having a boss is not fun, but then just, you know, leading their own business is going to be easy um and so on. But to become your own boss, you need to have the skills to be able to make decisions on time, make firm decisions that are very helpful to your venture, and then also reply to the demands coming from investors, bankers, and all your customers. And that's a lot of work. And an entrepreneur's life will be much simpler since he works for himself, which is true. But um, there are times where he needs to dedicate a certain amount of time to get things done and, you know, have them delivered or respond to a customer or vendor or whatever. And if that person does not do that and becomes his own boss, then it's a huge risk because he risks losing all the money he invested in making that successful um, venture, business, whatever it may be. So yeah, so these are very common myths. I think should be covered, and a lot of people are discouraged because these myths are in, they're very prevalent in society. A lot of people say them. They're just thrown around like easy sentence, but I um, refrain from using them, and also encourage others to refrain from using them because they have an effect on other people who are, dreaming to become an entrepreneur. And this is very short, but this is the session I have for today. I will entertain any questions if there are any. So it says, how can someone become an entrepreneur without money? Only buy an idea. So I feel like an idea is the main thing. It's not the only thing you need, but it's a majority. Like it covers the majority of what you need, right? Out of the 100%, I think the idea takes about 65 to 70% of what you need. If you have a great idea that's very innovative, I guarantee that there are a lot of, and it's also if it's timely, you know, it addresses current situations, very helpful to the society, so on and so forth. There are a lot of people who are willing to invest their money to help your idea succeed. And then with that, you can grow. So you can be an entrepreneur. Um, you can be an entrepreneur with just your idea, but of course you would need the money. But if you have a great idea, guaranteed, the money will follow. Any other questions? Um, are there any other questions? Okay, well, seeing none, I guess we can conclude today's session with this. Thank you very much for showing up, everyone. I will be sure to post the recording also on the Telegram channel, so people who haven't joined can learn from the session as well. And thank you very much for showing up.